Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on the 2017 live-action adaptation of Ghost in the Shell, starring Scarlett Johansson, B. Takeshi Pilo Asbek. I don't know if that's how his name is pronounced, among others. And it was definitely an interesting experience. For those who have been following my coverage of the film, building up to it, I've had a very love-hate, more so hate, relationship with a lot of what I've been hearing about the film, and I finally got around to seeing it, and I didn't hate it, which is probably the kindest thing I can say about it. I was very much overall left with a meh sort of feeling, and it was one of those things where I thought, going into it with my frustrations already inborn, I wouldn't be able to be sort of objective about it. I might, this is one of those fandom things where it's the closest I get to being the incessant fanboy. This property, Ghost in the Shell. I was afraid I was going to go in with the nostalgic lenses on, not be able to sort of watch it and view it clearly, and it would really be a first for me in that regard if that were the case. And I was actually able to watch it from a distance, in a sense. I was able to be a bit more objective, and I was able to take away from it things that I did like. But overall, sort of encapsulating the overall impression I had about the film was it was devoid of depth and devoid of anything that would allow me to grow an attachment for it. By and large, there is a large sense to me of familiarity with a lot of what's going on, especially at the start of the film. And I'd probably say maybe the first 3/4 through it feels Ghost in the Shell-esque. And I don't just mean the 1995 animated feature film. I'm also talking about like Standalone Complex, Arise in certain ways. There are familiar aspects, and there are aspects that feel on the surface Ghost in the Shell. But a lot of that stuff is just devoid of anything deeply engaging beyond that surface, beyond that cursory level. I'm seeing, the cat Pilo, whatever his name is, however it's pronounced, playing Bato, and I like him. He, and even though you don't see much of Togusa, the actor who played Togusa, for what he brought to the table, I liked seeing them both. Bato was much more in the film than the cat who played Togusa. I wish we would have gotten more of them. I wasn't all that impressed with B. Takeshi as, the big ape himself, Aramaki, the boss of Section 9. I was glad they actually still called it Section 9, in the film. His office was a little weird, perhaps more hearkening back to the 95 feature film and such like that, and even Some Innocence, the sequel. And there were aspects about Bato that harkened back to that sequel, his having the dogs, and the one in particular, the air quotes major, Mira Killian, goes and feeds after he is injured. Much as I speculated in build-up to the film, we'd seen footage of Bato with regular human eyes, and I speculated some form of accident or something would, intervene probably on the job, and this would bring about Bato's getting those enhanced photoreceptor eyes, and that was very much the case. And it was all right. One of the things about the film, and Bato is one of the standout characters or portrayals, whatever you want to say, that was really sort of red flagging it all the way through the film for me along these lines, is the accents were just kind of weird. You had like Juliette Binoche and Pilo playing Bato, and a couple of other people like seemingly trying to speak a sort of like straight English, kind of, and it warbled. There were times where certain words just, came out whatever, sounding more whatever their original sort of accents were, and so it was kind of like this. I don't know. This is weird. Like, you couldn't do another take of that shot, that particular scene. You went with the one where the words sounded weird, and they did it time and time and time again. I don't know if that's just how Pilo sounds when he talks, when he's trying to put on that kind of an accent, Juliette Binoche. Things of that nature were a little bit irksome to me all the way throughout because they were repetitive. And, like, the cinematography and the set design, the entire sort of cyberpunk environment, very, I almost imagine a meeting, everybody, hey, we got a close leaked look at what Blade Runner 2049 is going to be doing, and so it looks really cool, and like maybe, our movie's going to kind of a little before that, maybe we can do the same kind of thing, kind of sort of the giant holographic ads and interstitials and everything, 24/7, they're going in full form, giant building-sized ads. Who the hell is seeing these ads? If you're in a window of one of these buildings, you look out, you're going to see just like holographic haze, if you see anything. Who's looking at this stuff that isn't living over in the poor town across the bay, But I loved the visuals and everything. But like, they must have been sitting around that table and going, hey, let's do that. But instead of the one or two or three, like holographic CG interactive out on the city streets advertisements and things you're going to see in Blade Runner 2049, let's make it the whole city. Let's make everything interactive, CGI, holographic advertisements, and go this way down the lane through the thoroughfare, and what's around that corner, and all this kind of stuff. And there was a lot of atmosphere, but it was again very cursory. I never really got to know the environment. I never really got immersed in it. There were people walking through the streets on the few occasions you actually did see anyone. When the Major is walking to work or wherever she's going, on one occasion, one late night she goes and gets like a cyber hooker or whatever, and turns out it's a human being wearing fake sort of makeup like attachments to look prosthetic, which I thought was an interesting, intriguing concept, and it was left completely like unsaid anything about it beyond that. The Major brings her back to her digs, has her take it off. There's a "what are you" as we got from the trailers, and that's it. Like, that could have been a really compelling discussion out of that. What am I? What are you? Why do you feel you have to present yourself with this faux edifice of being mechanical? Is it because of the technology that has consumed humanity, that is consuming the environment? None of that is in any way, even remotely explored. And really just, like, the action elements were passable. Like, oh, so many kidney stones. It wasn't boring, but it wasn't exciting either. It was very, I hesitate to use the term paint by numbers, because it wasn't exactly that. It wasn't like, telegraphed. Like, you didn't exactly know what was going to happen when in every instance. And some of the effects didn't make sense to me, like when people were communicating very much over sort of cyberized digital signal. That, that's a Ghost in the Shell trope, so that was fine. But then you have people in the same room with people, and then the discussion ends and they just sort of fall to pieces like so much sand, like a sand sculpture. And it seemed to happen unevenly, and so I didn't know, how was that projected there? Was it something they were only seeing in their minds? A lot of the technology at least in Ghost in the Shell, you might get a throwaway line that just gives you the basic idea of how this technology works. None of that in this. Everything is just there. And I mean, if you're living and breathing and surviving in that world, you don't necessarily, have to be given baby steps, tutorials about how all that stuff works and whatever like that. I mean, you're living in that environment. It's not an alien environment to you. But for we, the viewer, certain things like that, certain technical things like that, just didn't add up. A large portion of the movie was very much falling in line with my love-hate, fascination, frustration going into the film, revolved around recapturing and sort of just, doing it in a live-action form, recreating moments from the 1995 movie, most specifically, and for the most part, again, passable. I didn't love it. I didn't mind it. I didn't hate it. I wasn't scathing toward it like I presumed I might be. I wasn't even dissatisfied. Like, I was just like, okay, they did that. They very much played up the sequence where the Major chases down, and I thought it was hilarious that it ends up being the one garbage truck guy. Something so familiar yet flipped on its ear a little bit from how it all was portrayed in the 1995 movie and such. But she's chasing this guy down the alleyway into the sort of, I don't know, shallow water, or was it like a park region or playground that just had like a couple inches of water in it? I don't know. Like the guy walks out like Jesus, and he's shooting his gun willy-nilly, and there's the Major coming from the opposite direction with her optic camouflage activated, throwing him all over the place, and right out of the 1995 movie, somewhat mildly impressive that they could recapture the visual format of that, the visible quotient. Meh. It didn't excite me. Ghost in the Shell, every iteration excites me when it's coming about. When it's something I know I can look forward to. It has been subsequently to the release of this live-action film, it has been released that, there's going to be a new Ghost in the Shell anime being produced. And some, as I myself have, are speculating maybe it is a third season to the standalone Complex series, which is my favorite iteration of Ghost in the Shell in any form. And that excites me through the roof. This movie, no. Going in, I loathed that I would have to watch this. I was scathing toward it. I mean, it made my blood boil. The actual watching of it was just passable. I didn't even feel anger or anything. It was just passive, just, okay, this is a thing. And I think probably the most complimentary I can be toward it is I will own it. I will buy it on DVD, because I'm kind of I don't think of myself as being a Ghost in the Shell completionist. But because it is a property near and dear to my heart, I want to own it, I guess. I'm even not, I'm just sort of passive about that even. The biggest problems, and this is where we're going to get into the problems I had with the film overall. The biggest problems I had was the characterization of the Major, Mira Killian. There is a point, I mean, most of the stuff that I feared going into the film was very much exactly what I was afraid of. Her brain is taken out. It's the RoboCop thing. Her brain is put into the cybernetic body. They're trying to create a weapon out of her. They have the tracking devices and everything. When she finds out too much about her genuine past, they can shut her down. They want to kill her, exterminate her, everything like that. And, they have programmed her essentially to be that weapon, to go after the threat of the pseudo-antagonist that is Kuze, a reference to Standalone Complex Second Gig, which was the second season of Standalone Complex, and told, all season long, sort of peppered through, gave hints and whispers to Motoko Kusanagi, her past, the Major in the series, and her having once known the man who would grow up to be Kuze. In this film, much as I speculated, it's much more an amalgamation of the character of Kuze and the Puppet Master from the 1995 feature film. And a lot of the amalgamated aspects were frustrating as well. But the chief thing that happens is, when the Major finds out something is amiss, and this is something that is implanted in her through her few interactions with Kuze, the sort of puppet master of the film. It sends up red flags for her that Hanka Robotics, that air quotes, made her the first of her kind, a human brain successfully implanted in a cybernetic chassis, a faux body, all of the stuff that they fed her about her origins was false. And when she realizes this, she goes to Juliette Binoche's character, who is the chief scientist, one of anyway, who brought about her creation, and she immediately drops the other leg about all of that, by the way. As soon as she goes and confronts this scientist woman, this doctor, whatever she is, immediately she's revealing all. It turns out the Major is the 99th attempt at this, at putting a human brain in a cybernetic body. All of those previous, with the exception of one, for the most part, died for the sacrifice that would lead to perfecting the entire affair so that the Major could be pseudo-reborn. All of that, okay, I can deal with all of that for the most part. Yes, we've been there, done that before, the RoboCop and other such stories like that. But it is what it is. I'm fine with that up to that point. I can swallow it for the most part. Where it really starts to irk me is the revelation that, of course, she once was Motoko Kusanagi, this young anti-technological rebel who wrote, according to her own mother, as we see the Major Mira Killian going and tracking down her own origins, not knowing that it's going to lead back to her former life. She encounters this woman who is Motoko's mother, and she describes a rebel Motoko who was anti-technology and wrote manifestos about how they are corrupting humanity, exploiting, corrupting, perverting, all these things are the ill effects it's having on humanity. And so, that just seemed alien to me. That didn't seem like Motoko at all. Not the Motoko I know from the previous iterations of Ghost in the Shell. Okay, whatever, fine. I'm a fanboy and I can't break free of that, but I cast it aside for the purposes of watching the film. I said, okay, this is the way it is. Like it or not, this is the story they're telling. Suddenly we have an anti-technological rebel manifesto-writing young woman who ran away to escape the infestation, the perversion that technology held and encapsulated on the humanity she was suddenly surrounded by, being a refugee who'd come into this zone, this city, And she was part of a group who agreed and felt the same way. And they were seen as criminals, and they were taken in irons and forcibly made to be test subjects to this effect that would see the Major Mira Killian being reborn in that guise. Okay, fine. I'm down with all of that. That's the story you're telling. Fine. Let's see where it goes, shall we? So, of course, much as would probably be predictable, following the thought processes of the characters and such like that, there is some level of curiosity-born sympathy in Mira Killian, the Major, for Kuze, in trying to track him down. She realizes, well, it's the Hunka Robotics people who have created all of this. They want to silence them. They don't want the grander populace to know what they've been up to, that they've murdered innocent people and forcibly put their brains into cybernetic bodies that all were failure after failure after failure, and they want to cover it up. And they decided to weaponize the Major to go after the one chief failure who's still out there effing shit up. Pardon my French. That's her specific purpose. She was created for that purpose, to hunt him down and take him out. Take out Kuze. She's not going to do this, with the support, for the most part, of Section 9, who are all coming under attack when they're all trying to protect the Major, although you don't really see that happening as a conglomerate. Each one of them is split off, splintered off, doing their own things. Togus is having a meal, and, the big ape Aramaki is going home from work, and Bato's just chilling on a rooftop and such like that. They all come under the attack of a hit squad. They all subsequently rebel and stave off the hit squad. But the Major seeks Kuze out, and there's a rapport between them. He is time and again trying to persuade her to join him in the grander net. This, hypothetical in our, here and now, in our world here and now, cognizant AI that is the formulation of many individual souls or ghosts, identities. And he wants to join this and upgrade, sort of move to the next echelon of existence. And he wants to take Motoko, the former Motoko, Mira Killian, the Major, with him. They come under the attack in a grand finale sort of battle with a giant spider tank. And after dispatching the pseudo would-be villain, the guy in charge of Hanka Robotics, whatever it is, who subsequently killed Juliette Binoche's scientist woman character, who I guess, went out in a blaze of glory. She managed to save the Major when she was ordered to kill her and whatever. In the end, after that battle, Aramaki gives the Major the choice as to whether or not he dispatches the villain of the robotics, syndicate. And she's like, yeah, do it. They kill him. And then the Major decides this is who she really is. She's a human brain in a cybernetic chassis, and she's going to stay that way, even though it goes against everything she once was, and she knows all about that and remembers all of that now. Because in this singular cybernetic form, she can help others. She can stop this from happening. She can raise awareness. I don't know how. And it just seems to me that it goes entirely against her principles. What should have happened is whether Kuze dies or not, and you're not really clear on that, they destroy his physical form, but maybe he escaped into the net. She should have taken up the reins of that and escaped into it as well, and thought to take down the system from within the net or create herself anew. Be rebellistic, be anti-technology, but use the technology to her advantage. And they just sort of encapsulated it down, dumbed it down into her one singular soul physical form. And that was just stupid. I didn't like it. It's not Motoko Kusanagi. It's not the major. And that's really the major problem I had with the film overall. Everything was just cursorily there, visually, visibly there. It looked like Ghost in the Shell. But there was no substance or depth or soul or ghost that spoke out to me and engaged me that this is Ghost in the Shell. And, meh is really all I have to say about it. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below if you've seen the Ghost in the Shell 2017 live action adaptation. What you thought of it. Love it or hate it. Anything goes in the comments below. You know, I'm past my rage point and just meh overall with it. And yeah, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. If this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.